All right, welcome to Now This Is Podcasting. I want to thank you for joining us for part 2 and the conclusion of our discussion. Sit back, relax, and please enjoy. All right, so let's move away from characters. Let's kind of get into, I guess, more of the meat of the story, which is really like these characters going through, finding these keys, opening these gates, completing the challenge, getting the Easter egg at the end. Everyone goes home happy.
Well, one person goes home happy.
Right.
Well, I guess several people could go home happy.
So what are your thoughts on the challenges in general? The way I think of it is like, it felt like it was written with, Klein knew how he wanted it to end, like how he wanted the challenge to end, or what he wanted the challenge to be about, but he didn't really know how he was going to get there. And it felt like he worked backwards. So that's why some of the ways they come up, like the clues, are so convoluted and so complicated and vague in a way that like I never felt like I was kind of unraveling the story with Wade. I never felt like I was like had a chance at solving it myself. Like it wouldn't have mattered what theories I came up with for what each clue was, because what ultimately ends up being the thing to let them know is so out of this world and so what is the word I'm thinking of?
Impossible to have come up with on your own.
Yeah, it's
without
so,
you knowing some specific piece of information that you weren't told.
Right. And that's so it's hard to like really keep up,
especially when
and
this
want to
all
be a part of this story, because it's like, well, it didn't. I'm just kind of sitting and waiting for the book to eventually tell me, because I never got to like. This isn't a mystery book for me at all.
Well, and
it's only a mystery for the character.
When the book is based on stuff that has already happened, that all of us could have all experienced already. We could have all seen war games. We could have all, seen Pac-Man or or played Joust. Like you and I played Joust on the, what was it, the Sega or the PS1 on like the PS1 classics. It had a whole bunch of arcade games. Like we played Joust before, but like
the clues that lead you into finding out it's like Joust or whatever are they're just so vague. So there's no way. I think you have a better chance of accidentally stumbling into the answers to these challenges and these riddles than you do actually like if you had studied it.
I would say
they're so impossible.
For some of them, that's probably true. Definitely the first one. And I'm gonna toot my own horn here a little bit for a second. So when he finds the Tomb of Annihilation on the was it Halcedonia?
Yeah.
I remember the way he was describing it as like the pillars and like a black cave, or the black pillars in the cave, however he describes it. And I was like, oh my God, I know what this is. What is he talking about? And then he reads it and describes it a little bit more. And then I was like, oh my God, this is Tomb of Annihilation, Aaron. Like we were driving on the way up here, and it was only because of for a few months before we drove up here, I had bought that D&D module, and I was playing it with my friends at my house Friday nights.
Oh, okay.
And so I knew who Acererak was, the Lich that he plays against. I was like, oh my God, this is the big bad guy of the module I was running. So I was able to figure that one out, but that was absolutely the only one, and I was only because that was the D&D module I happened to buy.
But did you figure out the riddle because of your knowledge, or did you just recognize the things that the book said?
I honestly don't even remember the riddle. I just remember I think I figured some of it out. That was the only one that I would have even come close to figuring it out, is all I'm saying.
I wanted to text you so bad and be like, oh man, I figured one out. Like I was
Stupid.
right. And I didn't. I didn't know any of them, because the way you get to these challenges, the way you get to these keys and gates are just so out of this world.
Now, and like one thing that he might have been trying to do is just like what a mystery book does. Like, so I just got done reading like 72 hours of the complete works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, like complete Sherlock Holmes stories, right? And that's how every single Sherlock Holmes story ends, is with you not being able to know what happened until Sherlock explains it later on. You know what I mean?
I guess I haven't read one of those in a while. I guess
that's basically how every single one happens, is like there's just a bit that he had observed that was never written because Watson, as the writer of the story, never observed or whatever. So that could be something he was trying to go for, but that's not everybody's cup of tea. Like you're saying, that's not a mystery story for you, which is totally cool. But that's what that reminded me of when you were talking about like not being able to solve it with them, is like that's probably not the reason. Like that's how every single Sherlock Holmes book is written, and people love those books. You know what I mean? So
okay, that's a fair point. I could just be being critical of it. I guess to me, I was just like, man, this would be a lot more fun
cooler
if I had a single clue.
Yeah, if it was more interactive, it would have been way cooler. If you could have been like, oh wait, even if like the activity that Wade and the crew or whoever had to do was something that was beyond your capacity or whatever, like play a perfect game of Pac-Man or whatever the case was, like at least being able to figure out something would have made the clues more fun.
Right.
Which is ultimately like, isn't that what the story's for? Is fun for the reader? Like, I suppose it's supposed to be fun for the writer. I mean, it's their artwork too, but like, I mean, you're leaving every reader in the dust when you make your 4-line clues vague as all hell.
I was hoping for a fun exploration along with Wade, and like you don't get that from this book. Like I said, I'm just waiting for it to tell me what the answer is.
Yeah.
So you talked about the D&D module that's on Halcedonia, which is where like the first challenge is at. I think you have a fun fact about Halcedonia.
So in the book, the reason I'm just even bringing this up is because he talks about how Halcedonia is used to learn how to teach little children how to walk. What sizes of Oasis headsets do you think they have?
Yeah.
You're telling me, like, what age do you think kids learn to walk all on their own? Like, my kids were walking when they were like 1. You're telling me that
they have little baby
before
headsets.
they were 1 year old, before they were a year old, this woman slapped an Oasis headset on her baby to help teach it how to walk, keeping in mind that these are not like full body suits. They're gloves and they're a headset. How do you have a headset that teaches you how to use your freaking legs in a physical world while your eyeballs and your brain are in, like, half of your brain are in a virtual world and half of your brain is in the physical world? Like, how does that even make sense? Why are you going to talk about using a Oasis headset to teach babies how to walk, dude?
Right. I like the idea of a cute little baby with a headset.
I know, but
gloves
like,
on though. I love the visual.
And like not even like actual gloves, but like the mitts where all of your 4 fingers go into one pocket and you just have a thumb. You just have thumb fingers. Like what? Who's making this baby wear an Oasis headset? I saw that. I read that the first time. I was like, there is no way Wade learned how to walk using the Oasis, and he sure did.
I love that image though. That's a great fun fact.
Baby Wade learning how to walk.
I did not catch it. That's a good one. So let's move on to what I think this is our favorite part of the book.
Oh, yeah.
We can move on to the Ioi Escape, sort of espionage.
It's like a heist.
Yeah, which is cool because so Wade, he makes himself an indentured servant to Ioi.
Yep.
That way he can kind of infiltrate it and ruin him from the inside out. And you're so right. I like it that you described it as a heist. And it is tonally different from the rest of the book.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting. And I really liked that a lot of it took place in the real world. Like he had to do actual practical things like with his own hands. And there's also almost no 80s references. It was a really nice departure from the rest of the book. And that's probably why it's my favorite part. I thought it was super interesting. Like it almost kind of redeemed the book in a way.
I think that part was definitely, it was a nice change of pace, really, is what it was. Because I think that like his hunt was getting stale or something. There was some kind of stall in what was going on in the Oasis. And
yeah, and Wade, that was when Wade had also started the job, so he wasn't like committing as much time.
Yeah, so it's because his hunt was going stale. It kind of like injected some different energy into the story, which was really cool. But it also showed a level of thoughtfulness to his character to even pull all that stuff off. One thing that I'm a little peeved about, I suppose, is he just like happened to stumble on like the perfect black market item that had the codes or whatever, because he wasn't actively seeking those. In the book, it talks about how he like found them and decided he wanted to save them for a rainy day.
Yeah. So
it's not even like he prepared for this heist by going and looking specifically for the backdoor codes. He just had them and they happened to work. And I was like, nah, it would have been cooler if he had like taken a page from one of his movies that he's watched 1,000 times and gone and like prepped for a heist and gone and found them instead of just having them and then using them. Go and find them and then you can have them and use them. Like that's more of a cool story. That was like my one problem with the whole thing. But like,
I'm surprised that's the thing that peeved you. Everything in this book is so convenient.
Well, no, yeah, that's absolutely a thing.
So the fact that you draw the line on this
well, I draw the line on it, but there's a bunch of stuff I haven't even brought up yet. I liked how thoughtful he was about this whole thing. And I like that about his character too. Like his character shows a lot about having a problem and trying to solve it and figure it out thoughtfully.
Yeah, it was nice to see Wade outside of the Oasis where he didn't have all this gear and stuff to like used to his advantage. It was really just kind of his own ingenuity
Yeah.
when he was stuck in IOI. And that's why, again, that's why it was a nice change from kind of, like I said, you said it was sort of like his own hunt for the Easter egg had gone stale and it was getting monotonous. That's sort of how I felt this book was. It was getting stale and it was monotonous. So to have this kind of break was really nice.
It was like
for the character and for me.
Yeah, it was like an entertaining intermission between like what was going on in the story and then like the last act, because this is when he leaves IOI is really the beginning of the last act of the book, really.
Yeah, for sure. So let's just move right on into that, kind of your final challenge.
Ooh, that's called a segue.
Yeah. What do you think of like how it all comes together? Ogden Morrow shows up. He was Halliday's partner in the business and everything. I wanted to save him for later because this is where his character becomes more important. He has been kind of left the responsibility from Halliday to kind of assure that the contest rules are being followed in the spirit of the contest, you know? And Ogden won't help Wade's crew in some ways because he's like, it's not in the spirit of the contest. But as we are going through the book, you find out that IOI has been essentially cheating and everything they're doing is not in the spirit of the contest. Ogden knows about that, has the power to stop it, and never does. So I think it's weird that his character kind of draws the line there to be like, well, Wade, I won't help you and your friends, but I also won't stop them. So to kind of be the arbiter of the contest and have all that responsibility. He's a frustrating character, and then just have him kind of show up and sweep everyone away to safety so that they can complete the final challenge. I was kind of frustrated with Og's character.
Yeah, and definitely with being such a big head like exec at GSS and knowing that IOI has been hacking their hardware, allowing multiple users to like talk to somebody while they're on the outside of the Oasis and doing all this stuff. Like, how is there not, this is the future. Like, Halliday has developed this super secure, automated, like, utopia, and these people have got to be violating some terms and service that come along with using the Oasis. Like,
Right. No, yeah.
How are they not automatically booted? Like, there's people that cheat all the time in video games and the software picks it up and they're kicked out. Like, how is that not something, somebody who's such a fan of video games writing a book about video games, like, and you're going to also write about cheaters in video games? How are you not going to address that at all? Like, that just blew my mind. That, like, the problem is the book needed to happen, so you can't get rid of all the bad guys because the bad guys are cheating. You have to not write any cheating detection software into your story, otherwise you won't have any bad guys.
Right, which is a part of the problem I think with this book is the villain and the evil corporation. It's so clearly, it's so obvious that they're evil and everything,
and against
But the characters who can do something about it don't, and it makes it all fall flat because it's like, oh my god, I understand you're a big bad guy, but like it doesn't make any sense operating in this world, you know?
Yeah, and it's not even like IOI was going to do anything atrocious. Like, they complain about how they were going to add like ads and a subscription fee and stuff like that, and people couldn't pay it. It's like, well, maybe people should go out and get a job. Maybe they should go out and like fertilize the land so they're not dying of starvation. Maybe they should go down, plant some trees so the atmosphere doesn't suck. Like, maybe that wouldn't have been such a bad plan for IOI to win. Like, I don't know.
It is interesting. Like I said, it feels like there's a lot of issues brought up in this book, and it's all just surface level to let you know that like climate change is important and all this. But then like no one, like you said, no one does anything about it.
No.
Everyone is just so concerned with the Oasis. So
it is 100% about the Oasis, that everything that's happening outside that they try to use to leverage drama into the Oasis is worthless.
Right.
You can't leverage the real world stuff into this fake world because the only stakes that you've developed are in the Oasis. There are no stakes in the real world because nobody knows what the hell's going on in the real world.
Right. No, you're hit the nail on the head. I like the way you put that. Let's move on into the final battle, the big, I guess, climax culmination of the story here.
Yeah, so there's like a lot of really cool stuff that happens. They, like, everybody gets their mechs out that they end up winning for getting the last key, and that was really cool. But the weirdest thing that happens that anybody who's played an MMO, massive multiplayer online game, will know is there's no /all start typing and a message will go to every single player on the server. That's not a thing in most games like that, because you'll have people who will just sit there and type in 8 == capital D and then hit enter, and then everybody's gonna
just spam people.
Got a picture of a whatever on their screen. And so the fact that a random player because Wade doesn't have any special abilities at this point. Like, he doesn't have an artifact that allows him to preach to every person. Like, how is that? That always just struck me as a weird thing because that's not how games work.
Right.
You can't talk to everybody simultaneously like that. Like, he uses the message boards and things like that and his, like, you know, vid feeds or whatever. So I get that. But it just struck me as weird that was a thing.
I guess I thought that's how he did it, is he sent it was like on his channel. And
He
then
does
got
do it on his
disseminated,
channel, but he also, it says he sends a message to everybody.
to everyone,
weird.
in the Oasis,
Everybody
everybody.
Hey, sorry.
All
Hey,
the
sorry,
babies- all the
Grandma
babies
who's
learning how to
planting flowers on what is it?
On Animal Crossing.
On Animal Crossing. Yeah, sorry. I need you to come to Castle Anorak right now. We got some serious shit going on.
Or like all the babies learning to walk. They all get that message.
Yeah. Yeah. Little baby 1-year-old trying to walk on Halcedonia, get a message. Mommy, who's this?
Yeah. So we've gotten to the battle, and like you said, it's cool because it's just like, oh, reference here, this gun was used, this mech showed up, and it's just kind of neat if you just like all of that stuff. But it's not really talking about the battle or what is happening or the stakes. It just feels like another opportunity to unload 80s pop culture and Japanese pop culture with all these like mechs and Gundams.
And I suppose it's kind of cool to like to be told that this list of mechs are in the battlefield and kind of let your own mind run wild, because it's not like you ever get to watch Ultraman fighting Mechagodzilla or something like that. That's not ever a thing. So I suppose maybe that's giving him more credit than he deserves, but like that's kind of what I did. Like without any instruction on what these things are doing, I have no choice but to
like seek it out in your own
but
mind's
to do
eye,
it myself.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you bring that up about build a story in your mind. One of the reasons why that was really hard for me for this book is because it's read by Will Wheaton.
Yeah,
who is he's in Star Trek Next Gen. He's a big
so
part
whiny in the early parts of that series too.
He's a popular figure in like nerd culture, so it's kind of fun that they got him to read this. And he's actually even like a character in the book. He's mentioned as like one of the
like, political figure.
Yeah, like an elected official in the Oasis. So it's kind of funny to have him in. I had a lot of trouble listening to this book and trying to imagine stuff in my mind's eye because I know who Will Wheaton is and I've seen his face. And so every time I listened to it, I just imagined I was sitting in a room. Will Wheaton was reading me the book. So it wasn't as like vibrant in my own mind to like listen to this. I think you need to get someone besides Will Wheaton if you really want to explore this in like your imagination.
His like honestly, like his constant inflections on every other word, like that got just tiring to hear. Like, dude, can you please read a sentence normally? Yeah. Like, you don't need to add inflection on a period.
There's a great part where Wade and H are arguing, holiday trivia, and he's like, "Oh, you're a poser."
A poser. Yeah, like I don't know, it's just the point. Like,
it's so odd.
Maybe it's the way, like, and I didn't read the book. I listened to it on Audible, right? Same as you. So maybe it's written differently with a different, I don't know, maybe it's actually written that way and he read it correctly and I'm just ignorant of that. But either way, there are plenty of words that I know how they're spelled on a piece of paper that he inflects very oddly, and they're just.
He says incisor weird, incisor.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It's like the pronunciation of some words just look like nails on a chalkboard, and I don't get it.
Again, it's interesting to have him narrate it, or read it, but it just felt like
not for me.
Yeah. So we've talked about cool mechs and all the cool guns and all that's going on in the battle. Through it all, Shoto kind of sacrifices himself to get the other 3 members of the party to the door so they can open up the gate. H, Artemis, and Wade have gotten into the gate. They are going to complete the last challenge, and that catalyst goes off, the bomb.
Yep.
That's just so conveniently written into the story to get rid of everyone.
Yeah.
And then conveniently you have that the quarter that Wade got earlier, which we didn't mention, but it's like kind of a neat little side story that he goes on. He wins this extra coin, which is essentially an extra life. He comes back to life in the Oasis, manages to go back through the gate, and he's going to complete this challenge. One thing that I thought was really weird is everyone else in his party gets kind of like patched into his communication and everything.
No, that's a function of Og and their headsets. That's an Ogden thing.
Still, it's something that would be considered cheating. They talk about it being cheating. Yeah. IOI does it. Yeah. And I was like, well, isn't that not exactly what Wade is doing now? So it was just a funny, like, kind of it's not okay for you, but it's okay for me kind of style of writing, I guess.
Well, and I think I don't think that Og would have done it had every single other person been dead except for him, knowing that they had just used the tablet of finding to figure out exactly, like, well, I guess they didn't even need to know where the tablet, they didn't even need to use the tablet of finding to know where it was. They already knew where the gate was.
Right.
But knowing that every other Sixer basically was on their way, they needed to make sure that he stayed a step ahead of them. Otherwise, he was going to lose.
I just thought it was funny. It's like
Yeah.
It feels like Wade and the other members of his group go out of their way to talk about how big a cheaters like Ioi is. And I was like, you're cheating at the end.
Yeah, they definitely were cheating at the end.
But yeah, it kind of pulls from the fun parts of the other challenges. Like you play the main character in a movie, or I think he plays like multiple characters because it's Monty Python.
He rotates through the main characters of each act of the Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And
then he has to play that. He has to play like
it's like a tunnel game where you're going through a tunnel, but there's like a circle like a circle track that you go left and right on. And you have to like avoid obstacles and shoot bad guys, and you have to.
Oh yeah, okay. So he's playing like an arcade cabinet.
Yep.
He beats it. He gets teleport into another room with all the consoles, which again, conceptually, really cool idea. I like the idea of
an egg-shaped room with all the consoles set up on various like tiers of desks with all their associated hardware and a big stack of games next to it. It looks in like when I close my eyes and I see it, I'm like, man, that's a cool room.
It would be like it's a really cool museum, like homage to video games. I like that idea.
Which was Halliday's office, is what he says too.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where he needs to discover yet another clue.
He needs to. He turns on the Atari. He plays Adventure, and he goes and finds the first Easter egg that was ever hidden in a video game, and that is when he goes to Halliday's room and he gets the actual egg.
Right. And that's kind of your culmination of the challenge. He's won now. Again, it felt like maybe the last chapter or two of the challenge. I was like, oh my God, it's just still going.
Well,
and it just felt like it was another challenge after another. And I get it's the last gate, but I was like, oh my God.
Like my biggest problem is, I guess I have two problems with the one's with the challenges as a whole, and then the second one is with these challenges specifically. But he's building the Oasis as this like you can do anything, program anything, be anyone, anything environment, and then he limits the actions, the meaningful actions of the story, meaning like, for example, getting a key, to playing Joust.
Right.
Dude, you could have had him mount an ostrich and actually have to joust the undead lich as your opponent. Like, you could have had some kind of cool epic battle doing that, but no, you had to keep your 80s theme and you had to make it an arcade cabinet. It's like that. It's just so it's such a, I don't know. It's just a waste of an opportunity. Every single challenge that it's forcing you to do something that's limited by 80s technology.
Right.
And that's such a bummer. And then for these last ones, to just copy and paste the same things. Oh, you played a game for the first one, so you're going to play a game again. You did a movie for the second one, you're going to do a movie again. It's like, there was no variety, and I was just like, okay, cool. I guess he's just going to do Monty Python now. Like, oh, that's same old.
Which is not fun for the reader to just sit there and listen to someone read the script of Monty Python.
No, I can do that. I can pull up my phone right now and do that.
There's no fun to the last challenge. I was bummed out too.
It's disappointing because it's just repeats of old stuff.
We said at the beginning, I think conceptually there's the idea of an oasis and all this stuff is really cool. Yeah. But then, like you said, to limit it to 80s pop culture and 80s technology, like really draws back a lot of the fun you can have in this world,
Yeah, there could have been a lot. There could have been a lot with this last one, and then there just wasn't.
So Wade wins. He splits the inheritance with H, Artemis, and Shoto. Everything kind of happily ever after. Sorrento goes to jail forever. It's a really simple bow on what I think is a pretty simple story that just reads like fan fiction. And that leads me to my next question, which is, who is this book made for?
So, I don't know who this book is for. Like, the topics are 80s stuff, which means that teenagers who are the ages of these characters are going to be too young to have really experienced, like an 18-year-old isn't going to know, probably hasn't seen Top Gun or anything. Well, I guess Top Gun's more than 90s, but they haven't seen like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not a thing. Like, even students that I was teaching, 19, 20-year-olds, haven't even seen Top Gun. There's no way they're going to see something that's farther down that way. So the material is too old for characters or for people who are the same age as the characters, but then all the dumb character choices and dramas and personalities are too young for adults who understand the material. So there's like a really crappy divide between like who it could be for, because there's no middle ground where somebody can understand and appreciate all of it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. It feels like it's written for an audience that's really young, but all the content is for people who are older, who would understand the references and everything they're going through. So I have no idea who this book is for, and that's why I just think that it's just for Ernest Cline. He just wrote it for him, and it probably hits really well for people who love the 80s and obscure references. This book is perfect for you. But I don't understand who it's for, because it also can't really be a book for kids because of how vulgar some of these characters' mouths are. So
Yeah, H isn't the best.
So it's like you can't even really. I mean, I wouldn't get this book for like. We have a 13-year-old niece. Like, I wouldn't be like, yeah, read Ready Player One. Like, it's written at a level that she would certainly comprehend.
And it's just,
all the content would be like either over her head, or it's just like it's inappropriate.
It's inappropriate. The timing of it is just cringy and inappropriate when it happens too. You know, like it's unnecessary when it happens. It's like forced in there. It's like sandpaper.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's sort of my takeaway on who is this book for, because it doesn't really feel like it's for a wide audience. It feels like it's for a very niche audience that wants to hear about 80s stuff, but also has the reading comprehension level of a 10-year-old.
Which is why when they ended up making the movie and they took the themes of the book but added recent, right now pop culture stuff that's relevant, it was a way bigger hit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I still feel like the movie does it suffers from the same thing where it feels like it's a movie for kids, but then they're walking around saying like shit all the time.
Yeah.
So it's so odd to me. Yeah. I don't really know who the movie is for either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think let's get into our final thoughts. What do you think of this book?
I guess I have two final thoughts. So one of like my biggest issues with this whole thing, or with the way that the high five, right, go through and figuring this all out, is after Wade's first encounter with Ioi in the office and Sorrento is like, hey, we have the bomb. You're either going to give us the information or we're going to blow you and all your friends up because we found you. We can find them. And then I do love how he gets his bosses, though, to like be like, oh, yeah, we'll fire him right now in front of him. And then he leaves. But then he goes back to the chat room with all of them and tells them that they're all in danger, tells them that Ioi is cheating, tells them how they're doing it, and explains all of this to these people who like love the Oasis and understand the gravity of winning the contest and understanding how bad it would be if Ioi ends up winning. And yet they still are so prideful in doing this solo that they won't group up together, even though they know that their chances of keeping Ioi away from winning is to do it together. Why? Why are you forcing these characters to do something that when you're building them as these smart people who can think through clues and think through problems and riddles and solve these things, you're making them stupid by putting this problem plainly in front of them and then having them just blow it off. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's not clever writing because, again, this is a book for kids. At least it's written at that level. And so when you do that, you need to create like artificial drama, and that's how that part feels to me. Is it's just creating, it's something that should have such an obvious answer, and then when everyone kind of turns their back on it, it's for the reader. It's like, oh my god, why are they doing this? It creates drama, but it's not done in a clever way at all. It's done in a really frustrating way.
Yeah, it's not fresh. It's like it gives me anxiety. I'm like, you guys are killing me right now. I think my last thing is probably like, Holiday's Contest is a really, really cool idea. The problem with it is it doesn't test the character of the winner. It just tests their knowledge of the 80s. Right? So you could have some super sweaty, try-hard COD player who just had help or whatever and ended up winning this. Like, he could have been a total douchebag, right? Like, is that who Halliday wanted to win this contest? Like, because that absolutely could have happened. It could have happened, right? Like,
I love the idea of some douchebag who just uses the robes of Anorak to
360 no-scope people.
Or like to teleport around and just like teabag people. But I love the idea of like the toxic COD player winning this
But
game.
It just doesn't make any sense to me why, like, if he cares about the Oasis and wants somebody to take care of it, right? Like, oh, Willy Wonka. Right?
This is exactly Willy Wonka.
This is exactly like, but Willy Wonka's was different because his test tested the heart of the contestant.
Yeah.
Meaning, yes, he stole the everlasting gobstopper, but he didn't eat it. That showed that he knew he was wrong and he gave it back. you didn't have to have a good heart to win this. That toxic COD player could be going around calling everybody in the Oasis the N-word every 5 seconds, and he absolutely would have had the power to do that. But that's not who Halliday wanted to win this contest. So why did he allow these rules to be the way that they were?
No, that's really good that you brought up Willy Wonka, because I think that conceptually Klein basically just like took that idea and put it in his own book. But like you said, he got the concept right, completely missed out on the heart of what makes Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory like a good story. It completely missed the point of, like you said, like like testing the character.
He has no idea that whoever wins is going to take care of the Oasis at all. He could have ended up giving it over to Ioi for the money anyway, or like for even more money. Like there's no telling what could have happened. And Halliday was just fine understanding that so much of society was locked and linked into the Oasis, and knowing that just any terrible person could have ended up winning just because you knew the most about the 80s.
No, I agree with you. Like I said, this is probably going to hit really hard for people who love the 80s. Just feels like this was a really fun ride for Ernest Cline. I can't get attached to any of these characters because they're not really characters. They're just attributes of Ernest Cline and things that he cares about. So this, I would put this as a not a fun read. I would say it's not worth your time. If that's anything you can take away from this review. This is more of a spoiler one, more of a discussion, not really a review of it. But it is nice to kind of get some thoughts out on what I thought was one of the more frustrating books I've gone through.
Yeah, and like after you and I have spent several days and text messages and stuff talking about it and listening to both books a second time, like on the way up here again, I definitely would rate them lower than I did initially. The second one is not as good as this one, so that's going to be an interesting one to talk about.
Yeah, buckle up, because we're going to have a review on Ready Player 2 coming out as well.
Oh, man.
So on a scale of, we usually rate these ones, on a scale of Ecto 1 to Ecto 10, where do you put this?
I give this like a 3 or a 4 after like reading it a second time and like really looking for things that like bothered me, I guess, or there's just more that's easy to pull out that's bad than more that was easy to pull out that was good my second time around.
Oh, I think you're so right. Almost all my notes were like, oh man, I didn't like this.
All my things were like, why did so-and-so do this? Why did so-and-so do this? How does this even work like that?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still glad you brought it up, because this is something I've wanted to do for a while. I wanted to do a little book club and everything. So we got 2, and then we're also going to review the movie, which will be cool. So with that, we're closing this one out. You can find us on any platform that you want to find a podcast on, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, SoundCloud, any of them. We also upload all these to YouTube, so go ahead and leave a comment. Tell us what we're doing well. Tell us what we're doing wrong. And if you have any suggestions for books to read, you can also leave those in the comment section. So thanks again, Kiefer, for suggesting this book.
Yep.
While it wasn't my favorite read, it's always good to have like these discussions.
Yeah. As always, take care of yourself. Take care of each other.
All right. And with that, we're wrapping this up. Thank you for listening to Now This Is Podcasting.